Chief Minister, it's been a year since you were elected, nearly a year in the power seat. Good time, I think, to reflect on your government's performance. How have you found the past year in charge?
Well, it's a huge honour to represent islanders and to lead a government. It has been an interesting year. We have had an awful lot to deal with, and I think we're making good progress in delivering on our agenda. Of course, the unexpected things happen, and we've seen the death of Her late Majesty, the King being crowned, and of course major tragedy in the island, and we can't reflect on that year without thinking of the people who lost their lives, their loved ones, and also the huge response from our emergency services, our first responders, our health service, and the wider community who, when met with the most challenging of times, really delivered for everyone.
And talking about how your government's delivering services to the public, I guess the unofficial public sector watchdog, Ben Shenton, has criticised your government for inefficiencies. In your manifesto, you said you wanted to streamline services and reduce costs. Have you actually managed to do that?
This is work under progress still, but we have a value for money programme which is working away and driving forward those efficiencies internally. We also have the new delivery unit which was set up with our CEO. They have been going in, getting under the bonnet of different areas and really delivering some change and more efficient ways of working, but also things that drive major savings, such as reducing the costs that we were spending on temporary accommodation for our key workers, and instead we've provided them with better quality homes so that they can better enjoy quality of life when they're here delivering those much needed services.
Of course, the biggest spend is on staff, and over the past 4 years the public sector has ballooned in size. There are 1,000 more members of staff than there were 4 years ago, now well over 8,000. Are you going to be cutting jobs?
So what we have to focus on, I think, is the fact that we are running a small nation, and that does need a lot of key workers, a lot of people who are at the coalface. We have over 2,000 nurses, we have a similar number of teachers, and so what we have to focus on is the necessity of those people delivering the services that they do so ably every day, whilst in the centre being more efficient and delivering that value for money that people expect. We are going through a technological revolution at the moment, and so just as we're expecting the private sector to be focusing on how AI can support them and being more productive, we also are reflecting on how we can be more productive internally in our systems.
That didn't quite answer my question though. Are you going to look at making cuts to the public headcount?
There are no major cuts to people's jobs underway. We're not looking at a kind of reorganisation that has been seen in the recent past. We fully understand that the public sector has been quite bruised by that experience, and they're still in a recovery phase, and so what we need to do is work out how we're all being more efficient and playing to our strengths.
And there are concerns about public sector pensions and the cost to the taxpayer. I mean, you've got public sector staff, some of whom are on final salary pensions. You know, at the bare minimum, you've got people for whom you're contributing 18% of their salary. Can the taxpayer really afford that?
Well, we are committed to delivering quality of life, and of course people devote themselves to public service, but they also have a right to be paid a going wage, and I think some people in the public sector will follow how their pay has performed versus the private sector, whilst we all have choices. That it is a fine balance to pay and want to maintain.
I know you talked about the market rate, but you know, most companies, private companies, wouldn't contribute more than 10% to their employees' pension. So 18%, it's a huge amount. It's not really in line with the market rate, it's way more.
But then there's a quid pro quo, I think, there, and that would be a very big departure from those reasons that many people seek roles in the public sector.
So no plans for job cuts, no plans to cut public sector pensions.
What we're focused on doing is being more efficient and delivering the best possible services we can and the best value for money.
Now, the outgoing Government CEO Suzanne Wiley has said in her final scrutiny hearing that she felt she wasn't supported enough, that challenges and risks kept her awake at night. What are you doing to make sure that our next CEO is more supported?
Well, with Suzanne, we've been listening very closely to her advice. And I think in taking the decision to leave, she also wants to leave the organisation in a better place. And I think that means looking at the number of direct reports that the Chief Executive has. It's a vast role. It does have many challenges. It does have many responsibilities. And that's something that she is helping us to work on as we move forward and welcome an interim who will take over when she leaves.
Yeah, because some people were surprised that the CEO, John Quinn, was made redundant, leaving her, I guess, with his responsibilities. Is that role of the COO going to be reinstated?
Well, that role was passed on, the responsibilities of it was passed on to another person, an assistant chief executive, or it was spread across the two assistant chief executives. And as we look across that structure, of course, we're always looking to find the best way of delivering those key parts of the organisation, because they're functions that do keep the organisation moving.
Now, you were elected by the public a year ago, so we thought it was only appropriate to go to them and find out what questions they have for you a year into your role. So our first question is from Dave in St One.
The traffic is just getting horrendous. What is the Chief Minister going to do about public transport and making sure that people can get from A to B quickly, efficiently and in time?
Okay. So, well, traffic, we understand, has been a bugbear of islanders for many years. I think things are progressing, though. The bus service is well liked, well used, gets great feedback from tourists. There have been investments made so that children can better afford to use the bus service, and things like that do drive changes in behaviour. I'm a very keen cyclist. That's my preferred mode of transport, and I'm really pleased every day. I get the sense that there are more and more people joining me in that active
Yeah, but you're on a good cycle route. I think that's the key, isn't it? And you've got to admit that the cycling infrastructure right across the island isn't quite up to scratch.
We do see that, but the constables are doing their bit as well and embracing the green lanes that we have. We're seeing those now being introduced in Trinity and St Saviour's where they previously weren't, and those are key parishes that help to unlock those harder to reach parishes. And so I think that's a really positive step, and we really are encouraged by that. I know Deputy Labby, Carolyn Labby, has been working with the committee to drive that piece of work forwards, and we're really pleased with the progress. The recent decision by the Assembly about FB Fields also helps to improve those active travel routes through the St Clement area, and so we really hope that things will start to unlock and that we'll be able to offer the similar level of active travel routes that are enjoyed in the West.
And just to pick up your point about bus travel, I think people's main criticism is the lack of frequency of buses. You know, 1 an hour when they lead busy lives just doesn't quite cut it.
Well, that of course is down to the Infrastructure Department's agreement with the bus company. The bus company has the ability, if routes are succeeding, to amend their timetables. And I know, the bus from St John, the 7:45 on Monday, was full by the time it got to the Motor Mall area. And so I'm sure they're looking at their figures, they're tracking their user statistics and taking the decisions that will be necessary.
Okay, great. Next question is from Natalie.
Hi, what we're going to do with Fort Regent, I think it would be a perfect place for 16 to 18-year-olds to have a great time. So try and think of some ideas to develop it.
Well, just yesterday we were at Fort Regent actually having a look around and talking to people. It is a huge asset and we've made it really clear, I hope, already that we want to better use particularly the outside space at Fort Regent. We've got 26 verges there of open space and we're investing in making some of that open space safer. So that people can access it with greater ease. Because we know that space is a premium, particularly in town, but when you recognise that there is all of that space up there, it is actually quite easy to get to, but so little used, and it is a beautiful, beautiful space. So that is something that we're really progressing, but we also recognise what Natalie is saying, that young people particularly want places to congregate, to play, to meet and do things in an enclosed space, because of course the weather isn't always as beautiful as it is today, and that's what we're now focused at.
So, but what about the long-term vision for Fort Regent? I think the government's often criticised for a lack of risk-taking and bold decision-making and creative innovation. What is the long-term? If you could have your way, what would you want to do with Fort Regent?
Well, Fort Regent was built with a bold purpose and vision, wasn't it? And it's something that I know my generation all feel so fondly. They look back and reflect on those times when they really enjoyed themselves there. It was a place of great freedom and fun, and we want it to be that again, really. It is a huge asset and we want to best use it. We of course first have to make sure that it is safe, and that's what we've had to get done this year. Those reports should be with us soon, and so from that we'll be able to springboard and move forward. One thing I have said is that whatever we do, there should be a roller disco, because I think people want to do simple things like that. It is one of those former fun issues that we would like to see happen again.
So no tangible vision at this stage? You couldn't say right now what kinds of things you'd want to put up there?
Well, we've read the Youth Parliament's report on play and we hear what they're saying, and we want to deliver. I want the fort to be a place where everybody goes, and there's so many different places up there that can be used to good effect. It needs to be a blended approach, but it's a fantastic indoor space, and I'm very excited for its future.
So something with a focus for young people, families, children, but no actual idea of the specific things that will go in there.
Well, it's something that we're working on. It's something that we want to deliver on, but it's also something that we need to engage with people on as well. It's all well and good to sit in a darkened room and say, well, I think that, but we want to ensure that we're covering all bases, and of course making it something that is sustainable and affordable as well.
Okay. Next question is from Matty.
Yeah, just kind of wondering what the Chief Minister's doing to bring young people back to the island. They sort of go to university and then come back here where cost of living's so high, cost of housing is almost impossible, and then there's just kind of no nightlife and nothing to do. So sort of what's the Chief Minister doing to bring young people back to the island?
Well, we absolutely want to draw our young people back to the island at some point of their adult life. We recognise that many of them want to go away for skills, experience, but then of course we want them to come back, and housing is probably at the centre of that because it is a huge barrier for many people. It's something that we are working on. I think the Housing Minister will be making announcements over the coming weeks. And we're seeing Andium also delivering a much greater number of properties, and so that is going to be able to deliver. It unlocks the ability to deliver and help young islanders particularly get on that property ladder, and so that is all coming down the track because we are very aware of it. We've also seen the Housing Minister deliver on the Empty Homes project, and so that is a really sustainable approach to better using the built environment that we already have, but ensuring that we are maxing out its potential and not letting buildings fall to waste.
Well, but how many did the Empty Homes scheme reveal? It was only a handful, wasn't it?
Well, no, I think there's some hundreds there actually, and we met last week with the British Irish Council. And we're hearing what they're doing in places like Ireland, where they pay a sum of money to people to help them restore and refurbish empty properties, and so it's something that we're actively pursuing.
Next question is from Ian.
My question to the Chief Minister is, what are you going to do about making Jersey more accessible to disabled people?
So just to give you a bit more information about Ian, we met him in town and he was saying that the cobbled streets are a nightmare for him. That he was very surprised because he's only a recent wheelchair user. The lack of drop curbs there are, and he was saying it's not just in town but it's throughout the island, so he's really concerned about the infrastructure, the accessibility for wheelchair users.
Well, having wheeled a buggy around for many a year, like you have, I think, Jess, it does make you realise that can be a challenge for islanders. We're committed to the island being a diverse place, and so I will ensure that the infrastructure team hear Ian's voice as well. But I know that it is something that they're focused on, and there are of course always improvements being made to our built environment, and I know now that we have standards of planning, and that is one of the aims. Accessibility particularly to public buildings is built in now within the Bridging Island Plan.
And the law, I guess, and the discrimination law, you've got to make properties accessible. And you know, looking at some of the state's buildings themselves, they're not always accessible to wheelchair users. So, I mean, he says you're looking at it, but are there anything specific that you're bringing in to improve that for wheelchair users?
Well, it's always that balance between maintaining historic buildings and making them accessible. But you know, it is built into the law, and it is something that is a necessity for people to ensure that there's access to buildings.
Next question is from David.
Chief Minister, when you were elected last year, you came into office with a 100-day plan. Have you succeeded in achieving that 100-day plan, and what's the next 100-day plan?
The 100-day plan was, I think, a great success. We identified 18 projects that we wanted to deliver on, and the majority of those were, and if they weren't completed in that period, then they have been continued over the year.
What's still outstanding?
Well, I think the constituency offices becoming properly embedded in the parishes and the constituencies is something that the first steps have certainly been made. We've got some great flags to put out when we're meeting, but it's one of those things that kind of isn't always easy for states members to deliver on, and so I know that they are all committed to holding meetings and being accessible in their constituencies, but it's a continuing work in progress, and there isn't perhaps the resource available to support that constituency role. The Assembly focuses on the running of the Assembly, that's operated by the State's Gref, and the government on delivering public services, so that's perhaps an area where some greater improvements can be delivered.
And you still don't have a public services ombudsman in post. Where are we at with that?
No, but the legislation is coming, and so we of course need that first before we could make an appointment.
And when do you hope to be able to make an appointment for that? Quite a vital role, actually, to scrutinise public services.
It certainly is, and it would be a really important avenue for those people who do sometimes feel let down by our services, and so it's something that we really understand and support because it's a fundamental need, and it should be it's well in train.
This year, next year, could we see somebody do the job?
Within the next year, I think we should certainly see somebody in post, but there's a process, unfortunately, to go through, and sometimes it isn't as easy as all that to say, right, we'll do that tomorrow.
And the second part of David's question was, what's the next 100-day plan? What's now on the agenda?
Well, we're going to be welcoming an interim chief executive, and they will step into the role and bring a focus on performance management, delivering that clarity around the organisation of the top of the structure so that we can be more efficient and more focused, and I'm very much looking forward to working with them.
Next question's from Mohit.
Hi, I'm Mohit. I am in Jersey for last 1 year. Obviously, I'm a tenant here. I find tenants don't have much power. What methods, what innovative things can you do to give tenants more power than landlords?
So tenancy is a really important matter because it affects so many islanders. We have currently got a consultation underway about making changes to the tenancy laws, and that is something that will be delivered and coming to the Assembly in the next year. Just this week there's been another engagement event with the Environment Minister this week attending. I think he had some very clear views, and that's what consultation is all about. What we would really love to hear is more voices from tenants themselves, because that has become very apparent that there's a strong landlord voice, and we really welcome tenants speaking out and sharing their experiences, but we recognise and understand that there is a way to travel in terms of improving standards and assurances for tenants.
And I think it's the, like many people, it's the cost of rents, which is very hard for people. It makes it hard for recruitment. It has a knock-on effect throughout the economy. So what's being done to help bring down those prices? Because more often than not, they're set by the landlords.
Well, prices are usually about supply, aren't they? And we're very committed to solving the supply issues. We've got 1,800 units of homes being delivered by Andium at the moment. That's really going to unlock some issues in our housing market, and there's a considerable number of private sector homes being delivered as well, and so this should all converge to help make changes in that market, changes that we all recognise are needed.
Our final question's from Jane.
What can the government do to bring down or help to bring down our prices that seem to have rocketed in the last 6 months?
The cost of living is one of our key areas of relentless focus. We have regular meetings looking at the levers that we have. As a small economy, we don't have all of the monetary powers that large nations would have. But we are trying our best to flex those levers to good effect. We of course introduced a mini budget last year, putting more money in people's pockets by increasing tax allowances. We raised the minimum wage to £10.50, and we continue to look at all of those measures so that we can help islanders with the cost of living.
One of Jane's key concerns was actually about groceries. These are essentials that people can't avoid spending money on. And she said she'd just love to have a cheaper budget supermarket option, like a Lidl or an Aldi. And obviously that is restricted by legislation around the number of, the amount of competition there is in this small island. Could the government do something to incentivise, perhaps encourage or bring over a budget supermarket? Is that something you can look at or have been looking at?
Well, the JCRA, the Competition Regulatory Authority, do look at that issue, and they look at the cost of groceries, and I know they are specifically doing so at the moment, and we really welcome that. As a government, we're looking at what we can do in terms of supply chains to bring down the cost of living, and the conversations that we've had with those who do manage our supply chains at the moment have made the message very clear that we are interested in driving down the cost of living, and we that is a key motivation for us.
Just make it clear for people, when you talk about supply chains, what specifically are you talking about?
Well, freight routes and the way we receive goods into the island.
Final question from me then. Sitting here a year from now, what do you hope to have achieved by then?
It's a really good question. A year from now, we will have, I hope, delivered a new structure and greater efficiencies in our public sector, delivering better value for money for islanders. We will have also delivered the residential tenancy laws that will better protect tenants. We will have also, I hope, identified some more sites for homes, and we will have made greater progress on the hospital project, so people will be assured that we're going in the right direction and that we will have be steaming on with the delivery and the building of that really important critical project.
And just one, I have to ask a question since you brought it up about the hospital. Again, it was in your manifesto pledge, and you mentioned it when you came into office as Chief Minister, that you were determined to deliver a cheaper hospital than the single site option at Overdale. Your Infrastructure Minister has said it's highly unlikely that it's going to be cheaper than that option. Do you feel like you've misled islanders by kind of almost making your platform to be elected on delivering a cheaper hospital, and actually you're not going to do no such thing?
We will be delivering a more affordable hospital. The approach that we're taking is very much focused on the value for money aspect of this really important facility. What we will be delivering is a complete upgrade to health services across the island. But when you look at the specifics and the like for like, it will be a more affordable option than what was promised by the previous government.
I think islanders will find it hard to understand how it's more affordable when it's going to be more expensive.
When we entered office, the proposal of the previous government was hitting £1 billion, and it was rising in costs. It was becoming very difficult to deliver.
Only because of the delays, and you've delayed it further. So they'd argue that actually, had it been delivered when it was meant to be delivered, it would have been just over 800 million.
No, that's not the case at all. When we entered office, it was heading fast towards a £1 billion price tag, and it also didn't have some really important aspects of care. There was rehabilitation, step-down care. So what we're now looking at delivering is over 130 additional beds and improvements that will really improve delivery of care for islanders. Our decisions are being made carefully and very much focused on delivering quickly, but with the best value for money, and we look forward to doing that.
So when you talk about affordability, you actually mean value for money in terms of the cost versus what facilities islanders will get for that cost.
That's right, yeah.
So that's an important distinction to make, value for money rather than affordability / being cheaper.
Well, it has to be affordable. We argued that it should be an affordable solution because, of course, the islanders, through the public purse, have to pay for this important facility. And that is at the focus of our minds and the decisions that we have to take as we progress.
Well, sounds like you've got a lot to get on with, Chief Minister, so we'll leave it there. But Deputy Kristina Moore, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.